In this explainer, we're going to deconstruct business success into an operating framework. Our objective is to map its structure, identify its core components, and clarify the cause and effect relationships that govern how it functions. We'll be focusing exclusively on the mechanics of the system. The entire system is defined by a core equation. Now, it's important to understand this isn't a formula that guarantees an outcome. Instead, think of it as a structural map of the necessary inputs and processes. Each term you see here represents a critical function. If one is missing, the system can't operate successfully. The output, business success, is the direct result of these interconnected functions working together.
So let's begin with the system's input mechanism. This is the process for finding and qualifying potential opportunities before they get fed into the rest of the system. This four-step framework works like a set of sequential filters. Step 1, scanning trends, is what generates the raw inputs. Step 2, evaluating market saturation, filters those inputs for competitive viability. Step 3 checks for a match between the opportunity and the resources you already have, your skills, your network. And the final filter, micro-experiments, validates the opportunity with minimal cost, making sure only proven inputs get to proceed. Market saturation is a really critical variable that changes the system's dynamics. A high saturation environment, for instance, means high competition. It requires a strong, distinctive advantage right from the start, and it carries a much higher risk of system failure. A low saturation environment, on the other hand, often holds hidden opportunities, maybe in niche B2B sectors. It requires less initial competitive force to get the system right.
Once an opportunity makes it through that input filter, it enters the core processor. This is where value is systematically generated through the interaction of three distinct but interconnected subsystems. Now, the primary function of this core processor isn't to create some huge output right away. Its actual job is efficient validation. By prioritizing proof of concept over a perfect launch, the system makes sure that significant resources are only committed to opportunities that have already demonstrated they can work. This minimizes waste and mitigates risk. The first subsystem, brand, acts as an amplifier for all the other outputs from the system. Clarity defines exactly what the system is for and what problem it solves. Consistency makes sure the messaging is coherent everywhere. And authority, well, that's the accumulated credibility you get from real results, content, and social proof. A failure in any one of these components just weakens the entire amplifying effect. The second subsystem is a process designed to convert attention into measurable outcomes. It starts with content that solves a problem. That's the initial input. This input then moves people through a funnel that builds trust and leads to conversion. And a key part of this process is the feedback loop. Monitoring engagement allows you to constantly adjust the content and the funnel itself. The final output, of course, is monetization. Okay, now we need to look at the system's temporal dimension, how it functions over time. This execution loop describes the operational rhythm of repeatable actions that drive the whole thing forward. So, the system operates on what you can think of as nested temporal loops. Daily actions are for high-frequency scanning of the environment. Weekly actions are for small experiments in building. The monthly loop is for validating results and correcting course based on data. And the quarterly loop is for scaling the things that have been proven to work. Each loop feeds into the next, which is what creates a compounding effect over time. This quote really captures a core principle of how the system behaves. It's optimized for gradual, compounding growth, not for short-term, unsustainable spikes. Trying to force an output like virality means you're bypassing the necessary validation and building loops, and that just introduces instability into the system. Finally, let's analyze the system's self-correction functions. These are the feedback mechanisms and the predefined decision rules that allow the system to adapt and maintain its stability. The system has known failure states, and these aren't random mistakes. They're predictable malfunctions that happen when core processes are skipped. For example, scaling before you have validation creates resource drain. Ignoring your brand early on weakens the amplification function later. Recognizing these specific error signals is the very first step in calibration. So, to correct these errors, the system uses a logic-based calibration mechanism. It runs on a series of simple, if-then decision rules that trigger a specific response when a specific error signal is detected. Let's look at the first decision rule. This one is triggered by an input condition from that opportunity filter we talked about. The system's programmed response to high market saturation is simply to increase specificity, to niche down.
This is a strategic move to bypass direct competition by redefining the operational space to a smaller, less contested one.
Okay, now let's consider a rule that's triggered by a feedback signal, this time from the content subsystem. When the feedback loop comes back showing low engagement, the system adjusts its output variables. It isolates either the message itself or the distribution channel as the likely point of failure, and then it initiates a modification to test for a better response. And for our last example, let's look at a rule that addresses a malfunction in one of the core components. An unclear brand generates a system error because it degrades the effectiveness of the amplifier. The corrective action is to recalibrate that first principle of branding, clarity. The system forces a return to the foundational task of defining its core identity in one precise sentence. The operational value of this entire system really lies in this distinction. Chasing hacks is about applying isolated tactics without understanding their context within the system. Understanding the framework, however, allows for systematic problem solving because you can identify which component is malfunctioning and know what corrective action is needed. A system's performance is ultimately limited by its most significant constraints, its bottleneck. Understanding this framework provides a diagnostic tool. By viewing your own operations as a system of inputs, processes, and outputs, you can identify the primary bottleneck that's currently limiting your overall performance. And that's the function of a systems-based approach, to make the invisible structure of success visible and therefore manageable.